The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests of this program and are not necessarily those of station staff, management, or sponsors. WPSL does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WPSL. It's time to Ask a Rabbi. Call in with your questions and comments at 340-1590. And now, here's your host, Rabbi Shafir Loeb.
Hello there, and welcome to a great Friday in 5779. We are post-Yom Kippur, so hopefully many of us have done some deep soul searching, and we're here to ask a rabbi, I hope. I hope that you'll have some questions for me. Please feel free to call in at 772-340-1590. This is Rabbi Shafir Loeb of Congregation Eitz Chayim. And so I have a couple of different things that I want to talk about. I want to talk about Sukkot, the festival that's coming, the festival of booths, and some things about that. And however, I'm going to address first a question that came up that's kind of a little related to the Ask a Lawyer that was right before me. And so I'm going to look at a story of David. David, of course, did have his little sexual harassment moment or sexual something or other moment where he overlooks Bathsheba, who is bathing on her roof at night. So a couple of the things that the story doesn't mention. First of all, you have to know that you're in the eyesight of where the king walks. If you're one of his generals, you're a wife of one of his generals. And so, we're not going to assume that she's stupid. We know from other things that she does that she's not stupid. There really isn't anything that Bathsheba does that is an accident. And that's just, and she is the mother of Solomon. Right? She is the mother of the heir. So that's worth noting. Right, because it's not like David doesn't have whole bunches of kids. He's got multiple wives. We really don't even know how many wives he has. The book of Samuel doesn't even tell us how many there are. He has rebellious sons. He has Absalom, who rebels against him and ends up getting killed. He has one son who rapes one of his daughters. And he's silent when that's brought to him, by the way. He doesn't say anything about it. And that's an interesting piece, too. So sex is not new, folks. It's been going on since humans have been walking upright, I think. And but it is worth noting that there are a couple of things that are very, very interesting and associated with the Bathsheba. And clearly, she has a relationship with the king. And so how does everybody know? There's a lot of invisible people around a king or a queen or any ruler, right? There are people who know what's going on among the upper leaders of the government. They're the folks charged with protecting them. And they're sworn to not reveal those things. Not because they're right or wrong, but because the knowledge of them makes the leader vulnerable, right? And so
consequences, Secret Service.
But consequences would be quite different back then than, say, now. If you leaked or if you went against that leader,
well, it was an absolute leader, so you got killed.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You want to talk about a little bit of authoritarian.
Yeah.
Right. But that's one of the reasons why people don't like absolute monarchs, right? Because they have a little too much power, and if they also control the religion, then it's really, really dangerous. And that's one of the big lessons that we get out of Jewish and Christian scriptures, is how dangerous it is when those are connected. And it's in many other faith traditions, sacred scriptures, how dangerous it is for religion and government control to be in one person. But they often end up that way, or at least one has a big influence on the other, just because those are two power bases. But getting back to the story of Bathsheba, she does become pregnant, and David comes up with this idea of calling Uriah back from the front, because he's out fighting, and sending him home, because as long as he goes into the house, then you can't be sure whose kid it is. And by virtue of, well, he was with her, it could be his kid, then David's off the hook. right? And their illegal affair goes on. And Uriah comes back from the front. So here's the question that I always ask everybody. Do you think that somebody didn't tell Uriah that his wife was fooling around with the king? I would guess that, I don't think people were any kinder back then than they are now. And people seem to take a great delight in letting a husband know.
Or who they were loyal to.
Or who they were loyal to. Or, whether it's done out of loyalty to him, to say, be careful, your wife's doing this. Or whether it's done to be nasty to him, saying, you
Okay.
fool.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It could be either way. And either way, he's going to find out. And he's going to hear the scuttlebutt. And he's not stupid. He's, if you rise to the ranks, then, you're not, we can assume that you're probably not one of the most stupid people, at least not in a military setting. And so he's got at least some tactical skills. And his tactic is to force David's hand by not going home. Right. First, he says, the first night, he says, "Oh, I'm a soldier. I'm supposed to be out on the field. I came here just to do a mission for you. I don't, it wouldn't be fair to my men for me to go home and enjoy it." And then David tries to get him drunk, and that doesn't work either. He still stays put. So that's a really good clue that Uriah knows something's up. And then David, of course, sends him out with the instructions to basically have him killed in the battle, right? That Joab is to set up the battle, put him in the front of it, and then have everybody else retreat, leaving him in the midst of the enemy. Clearly not a good way to live to a good old age, right? And then once Uriah is killed, then David is free to marry the widow, etc. And there's two interesting things that happen with that child. One is that Nathan has been the prophet who's been telling David, you're going to be a great king. This is going well, blah, blah, blah. You'll defeat these enemies, giving him all kinds of good stuff. But he also comes to him with this parable. And when he does that, right, Nathan, here it goes. Nathan says here, there were two men in the same city, one rich and one poor. The rich man had a very large flock and herd, but the poor man had only one little lamb, which he had bought. He tended it, and they grew together and with his children, and he shared his bread with this little lamb, etc., and it was like a daughter to him. Right, the definition of a pet. One day a traveler came to the rich man, but he was loath to take anything from his own flock or herd to prepare a meal for the guest. And so he took the poor man's lamb and prepared it for the man who had come. And David flew into a rage and said to Nathan, "As the Lord lives, the man who did this deserves to die and should pay for the lamb 4 times over." And because he did such a terrible thing and didn't show any pity. And Nathan said, "That's you." Right, because David doesn't even get the parable that, this is about taking,
The wife,
you've
not
got,
the
yeah,
lamb.
you've got, 20, 30, 50, 100 wives, whatever it is, we don't know. And, here you've got to take somebody who's only got one wife, you've got to take his wife. And with that, right, what it says is that David realizes that if Nathan's talking about it, the whole country knows. The whole country knows. And he does repent of it. Of course, he, does Uriah a lot of good because Uriah is dead. Right, small detail. And so the other thing we have in the story, and it kind of leaves it there. Right, there is no way for David to fix that because it's a done deal. But the other thing that we have, which is to me very significant, is that child is the only child that dies. And we have to know that. We have to know that because, again, Bathsheba's son Solomon becomes the king. And you wouldn't want the love child out of wedlock to be the king. So these are issues that have swirled for thousands of years. They really are. But that's the reason why David's first child, the child that he has, the love child with Bathsheba, is the one that dies. And that's why it's recorded in the book of Samuel, so that we know, right, that Solomon is not that child. Solomon's a second child. And the other thing that you get which is really kind of interesting, is a lot of stories about why second children deserve to be kings.
Let me ask a question that takes that in a different direction.
Okay.
I always understood from the limited parts of Hebrew school that discuss these things
Yeah, this was not.
that King David was this great king.
Yeah.
And of Solomon, I know wise. Okay? Because you
Okay.
have the one story or parable. That's about all I know about Solomon. So, if King David was such a great king and there are all these hospitals and everything named after him, why? If he was so disrespectful, if he was so contemptuous of
Life?
of his people and of why is it that we look at, why are there all these hospitals, King David Hospital? Why is it?
Well, two reasons, or again, a group of reasons. One, you don't hear about this in Sunday school, right? So we and I will share with you, I was not nearly anywhere close to being a rabbi. Well, that's not true. I had already had 2 years of rabbinical training. Scratch that thought. I guess I was on my way, but it was right after my father had died. I think it was the following year, either 1 year or 2 years after that. I was teaching 10 adult women at a temple in a synagogue, conservative synagogue, in Pittsburgh, outside of Pittsburgh, in Bethel Park, where I lived at the time, and the rabbi of that congregation walked into, like I said, history was one of the subjects. We had a whole big curriculum of everything that these 10 ladies studied with me, and history was one of them. Bible was one of them. So we were going through, and I was relating some of this story about David, basically going over some of his shortcomings, and the rabbi lit into me and said, you can't take away the hero of David. It's like. And I'm sorry, the story's in our sacred scriptures. It's there. And we need to read these things because I think, this is me, I think one of the strengths that talks to the veracity of what's in Scripture is that it doesn't just talk about the good stuff. It talks about people's blemishes. It talks about their failings, and it recognizes that people are complex. They're not all lily white.
All right, so then taking what you're saying
Mm-hmm.
and agreeing with it, okay? If one of the lessons from the Bible, whether it's Jewish Bible, the Christian Bible, is people are complex, there's good, there's bad, some bad can be forgiven, not all bad. Right. Then let me go to the question that everybody was haranguing me on during my show. Why is it, if it's true, that a 30-plus-year-old incident when a guy was 17 and started to do something but didn't actually do it, why should that prevent him from being on the Supreme Court?
I think the issue in that case is not whether or not he had a sexual incident at 17, but the fact that he said he didn't. Okay, so now we've got somebody, what you did when you were 17. If he said something, and I'll quote another politician, right, I tried it, but I didn't inhale. You can't prove if somebody inhaled or didn't inhale, right? But at least he owned that he had touched substance that was illegal. And so, light was made of it, jokes were made of it, and it was...
And he made it all right with everyone else because even Barack Obama admits to that.
Well, what if Judge Kavanaugh had, when asked about this now, said, it happened, I really regret that it happened, I was young, I was stupid, I was drunk, I have not lived my life like that since then, I feel bad for the pain I've caused. I don't remember her name, so the professor.
Yeah.
It was the other guy's idea.
Okay? No. But what if he had said all that? Would we, would we, Democrat or Republican, would we have said that was a very honest, sincere, remorseful apology? We're going to forgive that incident. Or would we not even be caring about, well, he denied it, now he lied. Would that have been sufficient to destroy him?
That's a good question. And so I think that, right now we've got No, I don't think it would have destroyed him. I don't, because we've got a sitting president who had an affair that he paid hush money for. And, nobody finds the affair as beyond the pale.
Let's if I may, let's forget the current president. Let's take this occurring at any other time, and you have a nominee who's accused of this, Democrat or Republican nominated by president, and instead of denying it, admits to the offense and is sincere and remorseful. Would generally we as a society accept that and put the person on the Supreme Court because they're an outstanding judge and they've lived a great life, or would we hang the person at high noon for the admission?
It probably depends on where you are on the spectrum.
But this whole thing is really complicated because then we go back to the foreclosure of her mother and father's house and his mother being one of the judges deciding that. I mean, it gets very, very complex, actually, as to what the motives and where the truth might really lie. I mean, where we stand, we're never going to know the truth. There's only 2 people, maybe 3, who will actually know the truth.
But that's why, like in my show preceding this show, I've tried to keep it very narrow. Here the question is a very narrow question about society and human motives and our society.
But how would society feel if she's making the whole thing up?
Well, okay, but what I'm saying is...
But that damages people who have really had a problem.
If it were true, and his response to this now had been to admit it, to show true remorse and apology...
I think that would have strengthened him. I think that would have strengthened him personally. It certainly would have for me.
I think it would have for me also, even though I wouldn't want him on the Supreme Court to reverse Roe versus Wade. But if he had done that, yes, I would have. I
would have had a lot more respect. I think we still do respect the qualities of people that we find altruistic, candor. Those kinds of things are still very, very valuable. And that hasn't changed, right? David did admit it, right? He didn't get it at first, and Nathan had to be coldly blunt and say, hey, David, that's you. It's you I'm talking about. You're the scoundrel that should pay 4 times. And then David also, in the moment, realizes, what's he going to do? He can't, right? Because Uriah's gone. Uriah has no heirs. So there's no way for him to make restitution for this. This is something David's going to have to carry because he can't undo it. Right? But David owns that. He's very remorseful. Now, there is a piece of it that realizes that, people know it and that he's going to be judged for it. And, I don't know how much that recognition helps him be remorseful. Because sometimes that recognition is it. But in general, we have, I'm thinking of, right, the televangelist, right, oh God, I have sinned before you. Right, it looks humorous now. But in general, people, when somebody is remorseful, takes that. And it is said in business, that if the merchant you're dealing with messes up an order and makes it good, you have a better relationship with that merchant than if the goods had been delivered properly in the first place.
And that's true. It's all about customer service. I mean,
right.
And even
being treated like a human.
Yes, and even to this day, I mean, when we have experiences that are good or bad, I mean, I use that as a lesson to my son. I mean, here was somebody who made a mistake and blamed it on us, and never going to go back there, and I'm probably going to write 5,000 reviews on Yelp. And
But if you hire a painter who comes out and waters down your paint, are you going to have him back to your house next time you need to change the color? No.
No, but that's intentional wrongdoing. People make mistakes. Okay, if they don't own up to the mistake, then you're probably never going to go back to that business. But when they do, you may feel stronger about them.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I think that's the point in the story about that we're dealing with from your show that's in the news right now, is not so much whether or not when he was 17 he overstepped the boundaries, but the fact that he said no, he never did. That to me is the piece that is anchoring, because if he's going to lie about that, if he's blocked that out, let's be even a little nice and say he's blocked that out, And I'm not entirely convinced that that's the case. What else has he blocked out? If he'll lie about this, what else would he lie about? We all know people that don't lie, and we know people who do lie, and we know the difference. And sometimes it's real clear where somebody's line is as to what.
But I just have to ask, why do we think that he's the one with the lie?
Well, but I'm saying if it's true.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not saying it as much as my colleague here, as the lawyer sitting next to me. But yeah, if it's true, right? If it's true. Because you're right. It's innocent until proven guilty. Absolutely.
Because we've had a string of this gotcha kind of thing happening in recent history, especially in politics. And it seems as though the accusation destroys the man's career before we find out if the accusation is
You're true, because they're in a position of public trust, and the public doesn't wait for final judgment.
Right.
In a court, you have to.
So you're right. So
Yeah.
really, media is harming court proceedings or future court proceedings.
Unfortunately, we are always judged in the public eye, as well as by what's real and what's not. Right, perception is real to people, and so I think the bigger issue is not really. Well, I mean, it hinges on whether or not that happened because he denied it. I think if he hadn't denied it, it just would drift off. I don't think it would be as destructive.
But I know that if I did not do something, there's no way that I would apologize for something that I didn't do.
And then it becomes a question, and that gets back to the request to have it investigated, because now that there are more details, then the FBI can come in and do a thorough investigation of this incident and perhaps related things, and sometimes other, if it's true and if there are other victims, they may be encouraged to come forward by her coming forward. I don't know. It's
So what they were trying to do, I guess, is to get him to step down right off the bat.
I don't think
No,
so.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I think there are always some who are trying to do things like that on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
I think the real question here is, A, did it happen? B, did he lie about it? And C, if either of those are true, how significant is it in the context of whether or not this is the type of person that we want on a 9-person Supreme Court that has more influence on our lives than does the Congress or the president?
Yeah, and I think that's why it's held to a high standard. And right, so either way, the question is simply a matter of hold off, right, until the details are really known. But the push to try to get it to be ramrodded is the part that really makes it questionable.
But they were ready to vote up until before the letter.
Well,
I don't
Did that
know
happen
about
during the Anita Hill hearings? And the Republicans got everything they wanted. Had tons of witnesses come in, and even Senator Grassley was like, "This absolutely should occur, and this way we investigate everything, and we come to a proper conclusion." I mean, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Okay.
But it's the game that really
You're
is
right about all the
horrible.
gamesmanship.
there is definitely a game on it.
You're right, but just use the analogy of the Anita Hill hearing and do what you did then.
You should be consistent. And I think that, the issue here is so big, right? A Supreme Court justice is big, as Stuart mentioned. It's very important in our lives, and I think that the public has a right to know whether or not it's true, right? So you err on the side of caution for his sake and for her sake and for our sake. If it is important, and I think it is important, that's me, I think it's important to know whether or not we've got a person who casually lies, then, for political expediencies, and I know I understand that that's common, that doesn't make it right. Just because everybody does it doesn't make it right. And, there was a time when everybody lynched everybody, and that's not the way we want to do things.
Not right either.
Right. So let's take some time, right? This is a lifetime commitment. If it's a lifetime commitment, 1 or 2 months ain't going to make a big difference. But it will make a big difference in terms of the flow of things. So, and I think that's part of the point. Is that the point of it, to hold it off until we see who's going to win which seats. That's a political game.
Is there anything in the Bible that answers this question?
That answers what question?
How we should handle something like this in terms of an inquiry?
There are some hints in it. Some of what it doesn't say specifically, but it does say, no, I take that back. It does say, it says that when there's a serious charge, it must be investigated. There must be 2 witnesses, right? And it has to be thoroughly investigated.
And that's the same thing for treason.
And, that's the whole reason.
But you didn't get to today.
So we're on the half hour, and I'm going to say one thing, which is that we've got the Treasure Coast Expo coming up on October 7th, and that's at the Port St. Lucie Civic Center. And there's going to be, you could have a chance to win a grant. It's more than a gift show, more than a health fair. It's so much more than most anything that you might imagine. There's food trucks. There's a virtual reality room. There's all kinds of things going. You do not want to miss being there on October 7th between the hours of 10 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon. Please come join us. Admission is free. And as I mentioned earlier, you can win $1,000.
And you can ask a rabbi.
You can ask
or
a rabbi.
ask a lawyer.
We'll both be there, and you can also check out some things about our congregation. And I'm being told by somebody right now that there's face painting as well. So all of those great things. I'm going to take a 2-minute break here. No, a 1-minute break, rather. Congregation Eitz Chayim, your welcoming, inclusive, spiritual, and joyful Jewish home in Port St. Lucie. We welcome you to renew your inner Jew and join us. We are Reform Jewish with a renewal flair. We are multi-generational. We are welcoming to all. Come join us for a Friday night at 7:30 p.m. for our Kabbalat Shabbat services, or Stolen Moments on Saturday morning, where we discuss the Parsha of the week at 9:30 a.m. Shabbat morning services follow Stolen Moments, usually at around 10:30 a.m. Our address is 540 Northwest University, across from Met Stadium, and we are in Suite 102. Again, that's 540 Northwest University, Suite 102. Please join us for Friday nights at 7:30 p.m. or Shabbat morning starting at 9:30 a.m. for Stolen Moments. Congregation Eitz Chayim.
And you're listening to Ask a Rabbi here on WPSL Digital 1590. Back to your host, Rabbi Shafir Loeb.
Thank you. Thank you for being with me this morning. Still some morning left. And thanks to the folks who are watching on live. And just so the folks on live know, yes, you don't get to hear the commercials and you don't get to hear the callers and their questions. But you can hear it when it's archived on YouTube. So go hear it there. And that's one of the benefits of actually listening digitally to 1590.
Yay.
Yay, 1590. Love that number. And it's actually not all that different from my college radio station's numbers. So it's a good thing. You can call in with any question that you might have. Again, this is Rabbi Shafir Loeb of Congregation Eitz Chayim. And I want to talk a little bit about something in our congregation before I talk about Sukkot that really, really struck me this year, how important it was for people. And that was that we live stream our services. We offer it. I originally started doing that when I was a rabbi in Tucson. We did it with the Tucson congregation, and we did it there for my Tucson congregation saying hi. So we did it then for the shut-ins and for people who are traveling, people who couldn't make it to the service, so that they would not feel deprived in that week. And so when I moved to Port St. Lucie, now when we did it in Tucson, it was on the radio. It was Blog Talk Radio. And actually continued that for a while when I first moved here. But for a couple of reasons, it was discontinued. And so once we started Congregation Eitz Chayim, the board and I had a discussion about it, and we agreed that broadcasting or streaming was really important. It took us a while to get the technology together so that we could actually do it. Although we streamed that very first
Very first High Holy
the
Days.
first High Holy Days because we did it on your computer.
Well, we did it. I did it on my computer. We did it maybe on a computer or the iPad. I don't even remember.
I think it was your laptop sitting on
We
the
should have just called Cliff.
Yeah, there you go. Well, that would have been a lot. Never mind.
I think I heard the station manager chuckle through the wall.
So, and now, thanks to the efforts of one of our members, Jim, we have actually really good streaming going on, and I think that's really important.
It's now high definition.
It's now high definition streaming, and we're pretty close to the front, so you can really see the people and you can see the movement up in the Bema area. We still have to tweak the angle a little bit, and we just got a mic that looks not. It's actually a little bigger.
It's a
than this
Groucho
one.
Marx mic.
It's a big mic. It's really pretty, and it's black and sits on the podium that's also black. So, and we'll probably put a flower in front of it. But it definitely makes it sound a lot better, and I love that. To me. A lot of people are like, oh, technology doesn't belong. As long as what you're doing serves the meaning and it doesn't detract from it, then I don't see a problem in it.
And I will tell you that my mother and my sister, who absolutely positively would never go to Friday night services, this is not, they go to Friday night services now in their own living room, and they watch.
Yeah. And we've got members. We've got members that are all over.
I would think that you could just reach more people.
Well, I think it's kind of funny. When I very first went back to studying for rabbi, I had mentioned earlier in the program that I had done 2 years of study at the I didn't mention where, but at the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College, because they were one of the first to admit women. They and HUC were the two, and it was pretty hard to get into HUC at the time.
Hebrew Union College.
Plus, I was not practicing Reform at the time, and I've got a whole bunch of people coming up on live saying, yes, please keep streaming. And those are our streaming members that watch when I do Ask a Rabbi, because I stream that too. And so... when I decided to go back and finish my studies to become a rabbi, to finish up the training, somehow I knew even back then that there was going to be a digital component to my rabbinate, to my being a rabbi. And it's funny because I had an Apple II back then. I went to an Apple IIe, and then it was a big day when I converted over to Big Blue to not PC, and that little dude cost $1,500 back then. It was no small commitment, and so. But I've always been digitally inclined, and I'm a crazy. I was in college taking what we called pre-theo, which was philosophy of religion, for my bachelor's, and. Brian's making me laugh. He says the chocolate challah tastes better in person. Thank you.
Don't get me started.
But so when with that, thank you, Brian. I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
The Hebrew Union College, the last thing I remember now.
Okay.
I heard chocolate.
You heard chocolate, and that just wipes out the whole memory bank. And and Sharon says I got to take some home.
You went back to your
I went back to school, and I knew that the internet. Oh, that's what it was. I was going to say that I was in pre-theo at Ursinus College. I'll give my alma mater a plug here. A little liberal arts college in Pennsylvania, and my elective was vector mechanics. Probably the only philosophy and religion major with a minor or an elective in vector mechanics. So is this I've got this weird 4-part brain that operates on all of its different cylinders part of the time. Never fires all of them.
I was going to say, how about simultaneously?
It doesn't fire all of them all the time.
Rabbi is like a shark, never rests, never stops.
Yeah, just move on different places. And they're comparing challahs on the live stream. Thank you. And we do have fresh challah. We will have fresh challah. It'll be baking as soon as I get back home. That's the next thing on my agenda. And but I think that the idea of bringing people in, and the other part that I committed, there's a couple of things that I've really committed to in my rabbinate, one of which is that I'm accessible. And, we've had talks about that because people are not used to that. I answer my own phone. I don't have somebody who, says, well, I'll see if she's available or not. If I can, I answer the phone. Otherwise, you go to my voicemail, and I will return the call. You can email me. I will email you back. You can text me. I will text back. And I put that, I will put that when I start a class. I'll put my cell phone number up for my students, and I follow it with the words I text. And, you can hear the surprise by the students, because I think we've become a very isolated, insulated, we're afraid. And the simple answer is, if I can't answer, I'm not a slave to the phone. Now, I will admit that I'm not a slave to the phone when it rings. Thank you to one person whom I won't name in Tucson, who used to call me at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., sometimes all in one night. And he did teach me to turn off my phone at night. Because there was a time when I said, if you've got an emergency, call me. So he taught me that if I can't, if I need my sleep, turn off the phone. The emergency will wait a few hours. And hopefully it will. If it doesn't, then people should know that they can get a hold of me. They're having a discussion about spiders. Thank you.
Now, I will tell you this, and I won't mention the temple. I won't even mention the location. I grew up in New York, moved to New Jersey, came to Florida. I've known temples where if you need to get a hold of the rabbi, you've got to contact a board member, tell the board member what the problem is, or what the reason is, and the board member decides whether you can have access to the rabbi.
Oh, your question needs to be worthy?
Exactly. So this is very different in terms of accessibility. Now, I will also tell you that he's since retired, unfortunately, had a dentist in Stewart who on his voicemail had his cell number in case of an emergency. And although I never had to call his cell number for an emergency, I had emergencies, but they weren't so bad that, I had to call him at all hours on a cell number. I personally appreciated that tremendously, knowing that, God forbid, I had access to my dentist.
Mm-hmm. And I think the balance to that, right, which is you do need time for family, you do need time for friends. And I have a couple of simple rules. You call me while I'm counseling somebody on the phone or counseling in person, I'm not going to answer the phone. You'll go to voicemail, and I will get back to you as fast as I can. If I'm having family time with my husband, I don't answer the phone. I'll call you back in an hour. If I see that you're calling me 5 times, maybe I'll look at it. If it's if it's clearly urgent, and that's interesting, and so I think that and somebody's saying that they emailed somebody and that they responded. And I think that people will respond much more on email. But I think the importance of it's being willing to answer the phone when it rings. And I know that has sometimes surprised people when they'll say, well, is this the rabbi's secretary? It's like, no. Actually, this is the rabbi. And, of course, if I
Where's
answer,
your secretary?
Yeah. And if I get a kick out of it, because sometimes people will say to me, who's talking? And I'll say Shafir, because that's my name. I don't really care if you call me Shafir or Rabbi or whatever or Doctor. I've got this string of stuff attached to my name, and they make beautiful pictures on the wall. It doesn't really change who I am. I'm not defined by my rabbiness. I'm not defined by my PhDs. Those are just part of me. I don't stop being those people and using those skills. I don't stop being a rabbi. I'm not. I don't go off of rabbi from 3 to 5 or something like that. But I think that part of that's my own ability to discipline and to work it out. But I've got this patchwork quilt of life, and I recognize that most people don't. And I will go from one task to the other and write boom, 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 back and forth. And so I teach English as a foreign language. On the internet, I teach religion and psychology and human development at IRSC, and I rabbi. Right? I use it as a verb. I rabbi. I might be traveling between classes, between campuses for IRSC, and talking to somebody on the phone and counseling. And if it's light, then I can do it while I'm traveling. If it's not light, then you kind of need to be a little more stationary. And I've pulled over on different occasions. It depends on what's going on. I won't text while I'm driving, thank you. If I have to text you, you'll get, Siri, send a message, and then it's really interesting what she sends. Sometimes it's close to what I think.
Yeah, you do have to proof. Yeah, before you say yes, send it. Make sure it says what you want.
Well, so basically, the people that I send texts to that way know that if they get something weird, to try to figure out what it is, or give me a call. And if they can't figure it out,
and I won't tell you about my almost text last night.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's important, and I think that so what is the role of a rabbi? What is the role of a rabbi? Let's go there instead of Sukkot. Sukkot's coming, and it'll be here all next week.
It seems like a challah baker.
Well, that's one of the things that I do. That one's actually quite a surprise.
It's pretty popular, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I was talking with the place. We use a lulav and an etrog for Sukkot, and so I was talking with the place that sends it out. I was talking with him yesterday, and he's like, "Well, can you give me this?" And it's like, you have to wait a minute. My hands are full of dough. I'm talking to you on the phone. It's on speaker. I can do that, but I can't look up the code on the back of my credit card till I wash my hands. And yes, I was getting the challah ready. So I multitask, and but I was joking with people about when I used to fly traffic watch for WDVE News Radio 14. Let's say one different station there, and KQV was their sister station back in Pittsburgh. Another life, but. I really parallel processed there because I was flying the airplane. I was doing traffic reporting. And I'm talking on the radio with my producer. I'm talking on the radio to air traffic control about, where there's traffic or not traffic around me. And I'm listening to the AM and the FM station simultaneously. And I got to the place where I couldn't stand to just listen to news. I had to have music on with it. Because I was just so used to hearing the feed from both.
So you need multiple things at once.
I really got to that place. And so I guess all of that has helped make me the kind of rabbi that I am. And it's made me, I think, a little bit more of a grassroots. I certainly understand a secular Jew. I understand not participating in a congregation because there was a big time when I was at Goodyear when, the star that's sitting out here now was tucked firmly inside the coat and tie, actually, because I wore a three-piece suit. Sometimes it was a skirt, sometimes it was pants, but it was always a vest and a jacket and a tie with it of some sort, either a scarf or an actual. Sometimes it's an actual tie. I went and got some of the pretty flower ones and used those. So it was always a feminine version of what was going on, but I was dressed as an engineer because that's what I did. And so I lived a life that my Jewishness was not out there. Can I hide my Jewishness? I don't think so. I think I look the classic Jewish look. I've got more of the Jewish hair now than I used to have, but it's always been frizzy. So I had some of that, and I'm sure that the way I talk and act, it's quite clear. But
are you saying stereotypes are real?
I'm saying some of them are real. Some parts of them. And but I think it gave me a better idea. I did managed a flower shop for a while. Flying, yes, I taught a flight instructor. Most of the time, what I did was teaching, which is interesting. Even as an engineer at Goodyear, I did a lot of teaching. I wasn't actually a teacher, but I did teach a variety of things, like something called technical mapping, which is a kind of writing, a style of writing that's designed to make it easier for the person who's reading it to find what they're looking for. And why do I mention all these different things? I think they really play into who and what I am as a rabbi. And it has given me a respect for things that are technological. I think it really does expand how a community can interconnect. And I think that's really important as we deal with millennials and with the kids coming up. You know, the kids born today have no idea what it's like to live without a smartphone and a tablet. I show kids in college a video of Star Trek, and the people have tablets in front of them, and they clearly are not using them correctly because they didn't exist yet,
But
so they didn't know
it doesn't
how to
look
use them.
futuristic.
But it doesn't look
to them.
futuristic to them. It looks just, that's normal. Everybody walks around with a PDA.
Will we get to the point where that looks old school?
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
sure.
when it's implanted in your ear or behind your eye.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that we're getting there. We're getting to where it's going to be much more. We're going to get to that place, right, where things are connected, and we're certainly advancing the tech. The one thing that's changing is the speed of technology advances. That's accelerating, and it's happening so fast. The big charge to my mother was to learn how to use a VCR. Right, and now you can't even find one.
Blink.
Yeah, and now you can't even find one, right?
Do you know that all of those dots that everybody complained about the blinking all the time? There's a blinking colon patent. I was involved in a patent infringement lawsuit over the blinking colon.
The blinking colon. Okay, there you go. So there's a law on everything, isn't there?
Somebody created the ability of those two dots to blink. It's
Yeah.
not blinking on your clock, and
Yeah.
that's probably because they didn't want that manufacturer of that clock did not want to pay the royalty
Yeah,
To have it
for
blink.
the blink.
and this one's not blinking either.
That's right.
Okay, well, okay, so there. Now I know, and patents and trademarks are also things that are interesting. That was one of the more interesting things to me. I almost became a patent attorney in one of my crazy moments. Goodyear was trying to talk me into that.
And I almost became a rabbi. No, just kidding.
Well, it was an obvious need to go back and fulfill that part of who and what I am, and I hope that it's meaningful for people, and that's part of why I'm doing Ask a Rabbi, is so that you can call in, folks, and talk and ask me a question at 772. 340-1590.
You were about to give out your cell number.
I was about to give out my cell phone number, I think. Yes, I think you're right. And you can find that on our website, which is www.eitzchayim.org, eitzchayim.org. Please do join us any Friday night at 7:30 for Kabbalat Shabbat. Somebody asked me what that means. It means welcoming the Sabbath. Kabbalat is to receive the Shabbat. And you can also join us on Saturday mornings for Stolen Moments at 9:30 and a service at 10:30.
And I will say, as I told somebody yesterday on the phone, our service, particularly Friday night, it's an intimate gathering. It's not a temple that has 200 seats and either it's crowded or empty and you're going to be all by yourself. It's a very intimate gathering of 30 people. And if you're new, when you come in, you're going to be greeted. People are going to say hello to you. People are going to introduce themselves to you. You're not going to be a stranger for more than 30 seconds. It's one of the great things about Eitz Chayim. And so if you've ever thought about, let me see what a Friday night service is like, let me tell you something. Ours will be easy on the stress of walking into a synagogue. And then you can find out what it's really like.
Yeah, and to what you're saying, that's one of the reasons why you see me emphatically putting chairs away, like we're going to get them away between now and tonight, because we're not going to be as big for a Friday night as we are for the high holy days, and so we stack those chairs back up, and that is to keep that intimate feeling. Even if you have a big room, if you keep the number of seats close to what you really expect, you can create that intimacy, and I know that because I've done that. We rented a Masonic temple in Tucson for our services. We had it, and that's actually very convenient because the Masons always orient their rooms toward the east, and that's what we orient here in America. We orient toward Jerusalem, and that's to the east. And so that the room was set up right, but we never had, they're set up for hundreds of Masons to be in a meeting. We didn't have that. So, except on high holidays. That's what all congregations swell. What I will say, though, is that in general, the congregations I've been at tend to have a large percentage of their regular membership showing up. And I think part of that is the effort, not only on my part, but the whole congregation. The whole congregation has bought into this idea of we are family. A family in the good sense, not in the dysfunctional sense, but in the good way that we love each other, we want the best for each other. And I charge others to do that, especially coming out of Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah.
And if I could take 30 seconds at that point, because I know you're running low on time. The best example of that is the service is an hour and a half, but the oneg afterwards, where you have the challah and the cookies and the grape juice and all that, there are those of us that stay there for another 2 hours till 11. I don't see that in other temples. I've been in a lot of other temples. We sit there and we, as they say, we kibitz about everything, from every topic under the sun. And why do we stay so long? Because we're enjoying ourselves.
Yeah. And there's simple
And
rule.
it's more than the cookies, it's the company.
Yes, it is, absolutely.
And so we practice the rule that those who stay late clean up.
There you go.
So that the person who's charged with for the oneg that week doesn't feel they have to stay. Right? They don't have to come early and then stay super late. Whoever stays late, the last 2 or 3 people clean up, and that's just, we continue kibitzing while we're cleaning up. I think that's important. I think that having a family sense, no matter whose congregation it is really important. That sense of togetherness. And we're coming off of this really holy time, and we're coming into the big festival, Sukkot, which was simply called the festival. When the rabbis talk about the festival, it's Sukkot, and yes, it's crazy. It's 25% of Jewish holidays in this 1 month. And as I'm getting 2 minutes left, and so folks know that we're going to wrap it up here pretty quickly, I will talk about Sukkot next week. We'll be in Sukkot, and they said in Talmud that if you were not in Jerusalem at Sukkot, you have not been to a party. So I guess I've never been to a party. Oh, well, I take that back. I was in Jerusalem the year I lived there for Sukkot. So actually I was there twice. The 2 times I lived in Jerusalem, I was there for Sukkot. But I don't think it's done quite as festively as it was done in the days of the temple. So it's pretty festive for us. It's pretty hectic on people. And I invite you to check some of that out. Check out our streaming. We leave it on afterward, and it's the good, bad, and the ugly. And we're committed to offering people a variety of ways to connect into our community. And hopefully next week you folks will call me with a question, because it's been very quiet here. It was just, I guess your session was just too lively, Stuart.
My goodness.
He wore everybody out.
Everybody, yeah. So there is lots of stuff there, and there's a lot more to be learned. And I certainly welcome you to call a rabbi. And don't forget our expo on October 7th at the Treasure Coast Expo at the Port St. Lucie Civic Center, October 7th. And that'll be from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Admission is free. And again, there's a chance to win $1,000. There'll be face painting, virtual reality, food trucks, virtual reality room, easy for me to say, and face painting, food trucks, lots of different vendors, lots of different things going on. Please join us. This is Rabbi Shafir Loeb for Ask a Rabbi.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.